Listen carefully to this incredible story. One day, a Zen monk decided to leave his temple in the mountains and travel the world to spread his teaching. He carried with him only a robe, a bowl, and a staff. He had no money, no possessions, and no family. He only had his faith, his wisdom, and his compassion. The monk walked along roads, through villages and cities, with no fixed direction, trusting in providence. Sometimes he encountered kind people who offered him food, water, or a place to sleep. Other times, he met evil people who insulted him, beat him, or drove him away. The monk accepted everything with equanimity, neither clinging to nor rejecting anything. His mind was at peace, and his heart was full of love. One day, the monk arrived at a large city full of noise, people, and smoke. The monk felt overwhelmed by the chaos and pollution, but he didn't let himself be discouraged. He thought that perhaps in the city there were many people who needed to hear his message and that he could help them find happiness. The monk went to the city center where there was a plaza with a fountain. There he sat to meditate, hoping someone would approach him with curiosity or respect. However, no one paid attention to him. People passed by him indifferently or mockingly without stopping to look at him. The monk didn't feel offended or disappointed. He knew people were blinded by their desires and worries and couldn't see the beauty of simplicity. Among the crowd, the monk saw a man who caught his attention. He was a young man with a sickly appearance, pale skin, sunken eyes, and dry lips. The man carried a pack of cigarettes in his hand and smoked one after another without stopping. The monk felt great compassion for the man and decided to approach him. "Excuse me, sir," said the monk with a smile. "May I ask you a question?" The man was surprised to see the monk and looked at him with distrust. "What do you want?" he asked rudely. "I just want to know why you smoke so much," replied the monk kindly. The man shrugged and exhaled a puff of smoke. "Because I like it," he said. "It's the only thing that gives me pleasure in this life." "And aren't you worried about your health?" insisted the monk. "No," answered the man. "What does it matter? We're all going to die someday. I prefer to die young and enjoy than live old and suffer." The monk became sad hearing these words and tried to make the man see his error. "Sir, tobacco is a poison that harms your body and mind," said the monk. "It causes diseases, takes away your energy, diminishes your beauty, steals your breath, darkens your voice, embitters your taste, irritates your eyes, dirties your teeth, stains your fingers, shortens your life. What pleasure can you find in something that does you so much harm?" "I don't care," replied the man. "It's my choice and no one has the right to judge me. I'm free to do what I want with my body." "Sir, tobacco doesn't make you free but enslaved," said the monk. "It makes you dependent on a substance that brings you nothing good and prevents you from seeing the true nature of things. It makes you believe you need something external to be happy when happiness is within you." "Don't come to me with that nonsense," said the man. "I don't believe in those things. I only believe in what I see, what I feel, what I like, and I like to smoke. So leave me alone and go bother someone else." The man turned around and walked away from the monk without listening anymore. The monk followed him with his gaze and sighed. Then he sat down again to meditate, hoping that the man would reflect on his words and that someday he would change his attitude. The monk knew that the man was a human being like him and had the potential to awaken to the truth. But he also knew that the man was trapped in illusion and that only he could free himself. The monk could do nothing more than offer his advice, his example, and his compassion. The rest depended on the man. The Zen monk continued his journey through the world without losing hope of finding someone who would want to listen to his teaching. Although he encountered many difficulties and rejections, the monk did not become discouraged or angry. He thought that everything was part of the path, and that each experience served to learn and grow. The monk arrived at a small village where poverty and sadness reigned. The monk saw that people lived in dilapidated houses, wore dirty and torn clothes, worked hard in the fields or in the mine, and barely had enough to eat. The monk felt great compassion for the people and decided to stay a while in the village to see if he could help them in some way. The monk approached a humble house where an old woman lived with her grandson. The monk asked permission to spend the night and offered his help for whatever they needed. The old woman accepted with gratitude and told him he could sleep in the barn with the chickens. The grandson told him he could help collect firewood. The monk thanked them for their hospitality and prepared to collaborate with them. The monk spent several days in the old woman's house, sharing their simple and hard life. The monk spoke to them about his philosophy, his way of seeing the world, his search for happiness. The old woman and grandson listened with attention and respect, and sometimes asked him questions or made comments. The monk felt happy to have found two people who showed interest in his message and treated him with kindness. One day, the monk wanted to know the village and went for a walk. The monk saw that the village was very small and had only a few shops and services. The monk stopped in front of a tavern where he saw a group of men drinking alcohol and playing cards. The monk felt curious to know what these men were doing and why they gave themselves to this vice. The monk entered the tavern and approached the bar. There he asked for a glass of water and sat on a stool. The monk observed the men who were at the table and realized they were the same ones who worked in the fields or in the mine. The monk saw they had reddened faces, glassy eyes, pestilent breath, hoarse voices, and twisted gestures. The monk saw that they drank without measure, laughed without reason, insulted without cause, and gambled without sense. The monk felt great compassion for these men and decided to approach them. "Excuse me, gentlemen," said the monk with a smile. "May I ask you a question?" The men were surprised to see the monk and looked at him with disdain. "What do you want?" one of them asked rudely. "I just want to know why you drink so much," replied the monk kindly. The men laughed and mocked the monk. "Why do we drink so much?" repeated another one ironically. "Because we like it, because it amuses us, because it helps us forget." "Forget what?" insisted the monk. "Forget everything," answered another one bitterly. "Forget the misery, the work, the hunger, the pain, the loneliness, death. Forget this life of misery." The monk became sad hearing these words and tried to make the men see their error. "Gentlemen, alcohol is a poison that harms your body and mind," said the monk. "It causes diseases, takes away your strength, diminishes your intelligence, steals your dignity, darkens your consciousness, embitters your character, irritates your mood, shortens your life. What fun can you find in something that does you so much harm?" "We don't care," replied the men. "It's our choice and no one has the right to judge us. We are free to do what we want with our life." "Gentlemen, alcohol doesn't make you free but enslaved," said the monk. "It makes you dependent on a substance that brings you nothing good and prevents you from facing reality with wisdom. It makes you believe you need something external to be happy when happiness is within you." "Don't come to us with that nonsense," said the men. "We don't believe in those things. We only believe in what we see, what we feel, what we like, and we like to drink. So leave us in peace and go bother someone else." The men turned around and continued drinking and playing without listening anymore. The monk followed them with his gaze and sighed. Then he stood up from his stool and left the tavern, hoping that the men would reflect on his words and that someday they would change their attitude. The monk knew that the men were human beings like him and had the potential to awaken to the truth. But he also knew that the men were trapped in illusion and that only they could free themselves. The monk could do nothing more than offer his advice, his example, and his compassion. The rest depended on the men. The Zen monk continued his journey through the world without losing faith in finding someone who would want to listen to his teaching. Although he encountered many adversities and obstacles, the monk did not despair or give up. He thought that everything was part of destiny, and that each situation served to test and strengthen his spirit. The monk arrived at a large city where abundance and joy reigned. The monk saw that people lived in luxurious houses, wore elegant and clean clothes, worked little in commerce or administration, and had much to eat. The monk felt great curiosity about the people and decided to stay a while in the city to see if he could learn something from them. The monk approached a palace where a king lived with his family and court. The monk asked permission to enter and offered his wisdom in exchange for their hospitality. The king accepted with generosity and told him he could stay in one of the rooms and could participate in the banquets and festivities. The monk thanked him for his hospitality and prepared to live with them. The monks spent several days in the palace sharing their opulent and festive life. The monk spoke to them about his philosophy, his way of seeing the world, his search for happiness. The king and his family listened with courtesy and admiration, and sometimes asked him questions or gave him praise. The monk felt flattered to have found people who showed respect for his message and treated him with generosity. One day, the monk wanted to know the city and went for a walk. The monk saw that the city was very large and had many shops and services. The monk stopped in front of a market where he saw a man who was eating everything he could without limit. The monk felt intrigued to know what this man was doing and why he gave himself to this vice. The monk entered the market and approached the man. There he saw that the man was the king and that he was surrounded by his servants and guards. The monk saw that the king had an obese body, sweaty face, heavy breath, panting voice, and swollen expression. The monk saw that the king ate without measure, tasted everything, left nothing, and asked for more and more. The monk felt great compassion for the king and decided to speak to him. "Excuse me, your majesty," said the monk with a bow. "May I ask you a question?" The king was surprised to see the monk and looked at him with benevolence. "What do you want?" he asked with condescension. "I just want to know why you eat so much," replied the monk with humility. The king laughed and offered him a piece of cake. "Why do I eat so much?" he repeated with joviality. "Because I can, because it amuses me, because it helps me enjoy." "Enjoy what?" insisted the monk. "Enjoy everything," answered the king with pride. "Enjoy wealth, power, fame, pleasure, glory, life. Enjoy this wonderful life." The monk became sad hearing these words and tried to make the king see his error. "Your Majesty, food is a poison that harms your body and mind," said the monk. "It causes diseases, takes away your agility, diminishes your lucidity, steals your health, darkens your vision, embitters your mood, irritates your stomach, shortens your life. What enjoyment can you find in something that does you so much harm?" "I don't care," replied the king. "It's my choice and no one has the right to judge me. I am free to do what I want with my life." "Your Majesty, food doesn't make you free but enslaved," said the monk. It makes you dependent on a substance that brings you nothing good and prevents you from maintaining a balance between body and spirit. It makes you believe you need something external to be happy when happiness is within you. Don't come to me with that nonsense, said the king. I don't believe in those things. I only believe in what I see, what I feel, what I like, and I like to eat. So leave me in peace and go bother someone else. The king turned around and continued eating and ordering without listening anymore. The monk followed him with his gaze and sighed. Then he moved away from the king and left the market, hoping that the king would reflect on his words and that someday he would change his attitude. The monk knew that the king was a human being like him and had the potential to awaken to the truth. But he also knew that the king was trapped in illusion and that only he could free himself. The monk could do nothing more than offer his advice, his example, and his compassion. The rest depended on the king. The Zen monk continued his journey through the world without losing confidence in finding someone who would want to listen to his teaching. Although he encountered many resistances and difficulties, the monk did not become discouraged or deviate. He thought that everything was part of learning, and that each challenge served to improve and surpass himself. The monk arrived at an island where tranquility and beauty reigned. The monk saw that people lived in wooden cabins, wore light and colorful clothes, worked little in fishing or crafts, and had enough to live on. The monk felt great admiration for the people and decided to stay a while on the island to see if he could share something with them. The monk approached a cabin where a man lived with his wife and children. The monk asked permission to stay and offered his friendship in exchange for their hospitality. The man accepted with sympathy and told him he could sleep in a hammock and could eat what was available. The monk thanked him for his hospitality and prepared to live with them. The monks spent several days in the cabin, sharing their happy and relaxed life. The monk talked about his philosophy, his way of seeing the world, his search for happiness. The man and his family listened with interest and affection, and sometimes asked him questions or made jokes. The monk felt happy to have found people who showed affection for his message and treated him with cordiality. One day, the monk wanted to know the island and went for a walk. The monk saw that the island was very beautiful and had many plants and animals. The monk stopped in front of a cave where he saw a man who slept all day without doing anything. The monk felt curious to know what this man was doing and why he gave himself to this vice. The monk entered the cave and approached the man. There he saw that the man was the brother of the man from the cabin, and that he was alone and abandoned. The monk saw that the man had a flabby body, pale face, rancid breath, weak voice, and dull expression. The monk saw that the man slept without measure, didn't get up, didn't clean himself, didn't eat, didn't take care of himself. The monk felt great compassion for the man and decided to wake him. "Excuse me, sir," said the monk with a soft voice. "May I ask you a question?" The man was surprised to see the monk and looked at him with annoyance. "What do you want?" he asked with laziness. "I just want to know why you sleep so much," replied the monk with patience. The man shrugged and yawned. "Because I like it," he said. "It's the only thing that gives me rest in this life." "And aren't you worried about your life?" insisted the monk. "No," answered the man. "What does it matter? We're all going to die someday. I prefer to die sleeping and dreaming than live awake and suffering." The monk became sad hearing these words and tried to make the man see his error. "Sir, sleep is a poison that harms your body and mind," said the monk. "It causes diseases, takes away your vitality, diminishes your creativity, robs you of opportunity, darkens your memory, embitters your spirit, irritates your soul, shortens your life. What rest can you find in something that does you so much harm? I don't care, replied the man. It's my choice and no one has the right to judge me. I am free to do what I want with my life. Sir, sleep doesn't make you free but enslaved, said the monk. It makes you dependent on something that brings you nothing good and prevents you from taking advantage of the present moment. It makes you believe you need something external to be happy when happiness is within you. Don't come to me with that nonsense, said the man. I don't believe in those things. I only believe in what I see, what I feel, what I like, and I like to sleep. So leave me in peace and go bother someone else. The man turned around and covered himself with a blanket without listening anymore. The monk followed him with his gaze and sighed. Then he moved away from the man and left the cave, hoping that the man would reflect on his words and that someday he would change his attitude. This Zen story teaches us that we must take care of ourselves and not let external circumstances affect us negatively. However, sometimes we are the ones who harm ourselves with habits that can damage our health and well-being. Want to know what they are? In this video, I'm going to show you 10 habits that deteriorate your health and give you some advice to avoid or change them. Pay attention because these habits might be affecting your life without you realizing it. Skipping breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day as it provides you with the energy and nutrients you need to start the day with vitality. Skipping breakfast can cause exhaustion, loss of concentration, and greater risk of overeating later. To avoid this habit, try to wake up with enough time to prepare and enjoy a balanced breakfast that includes fruits, whole grains, dairy products, and proteins. Smoking. Tobacco kills respiratory system cells and increases the risk of suffering diseases such as lung cancer, chronic cough, and difficulty breathing. Additionally, tobacco smoke also affects people around you, who become passive smokers. To quit smoking, it's best to seek professional help that can guide you about available options such as patches, gum, medications, or therapies. You can also rely on your family and friends and look for activities that distract and relax you. Sleeping too little. The recommendation is to sleep between 6 and 8 hours daily, depending on each person's needs. If you sleep less, you may suffer from fatigue, bad mood, poor performance, and increased appetite. To sleep better, it's convenient to follow a sleep routine that involves going to bed and getting up at the same time every day, avoiding long naps, reducing caffeine and alcohol consumption, and creating a comfortable and quiet environment in the bedroom. Abusing alcohol. Excessive alcohol consumption can damage the liver, brain, and heart, as well as promote the development of certain types of cancer. It can also affect your mood, memory, self-control, and decision-making ability. To reduce alcohol consumption, you can set a limit of drinks per day or per week. Choose drinks with less alcohol content. Alternate alcohol with water or soft drinks, and avoid drinking in situations of stress or boredom. Not doing physical activity. Leading a sedentary life can affect your cardiovascular health, metabolism, and brain function. Physical exercise helps you maintain a healthy weight, strengthen your muscles and bones, prevent chronic diseases, and improve your mood and self-esteem. To incorporate physical activity into your routine, you can choose an activity that you enjoy and find fun, such as walking, dancing, swimming, or practicing a sport. The ideal is to do at least 30 minutes of moderate exercise per day, or 150 minutes per week. Eating at irregular hours and snacking, Snacking between meals on unhealthy foods like potato chips, candies, or chocolate can raise blood sugar levels and promote obesity and diabetes. These foods usually have many calories, fats, sugars, and salt, and few nutrients. To avoid this habit, it's better to have 5 meals a day that include a complete breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 light snacks such as fruit, yogurt, or nuts. It's also important to drink water to stay hydrated and feel satisfied, and avoid sugary or alcoholic beverages. Being stressed. Chronic stress can cause physical problems such as muscle tension, hair loss, or ulcers, and emotional problems like depression and anxiety. Stress occurs when we perceive that environmental demands exceed our resources to cope with them. To manage stress, it's necessary to identify its sources and seek solutions or alternatives to resolve or minimize them. It's also useful to practice relaxation techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, or yoga, and dedicate time to pleasant activities like reading, listening to music, or being with friends. Not protecting yourself from the sun. Excessive sun exposure without adequate protection can cause sunburns, heat stroke, headaches, vision problems, and skin cancer. The sun's ultraviolet rays can damage skin cells' DNA and cause premature aging or malignant transformation. To protect yourself from the sun, it's recommended to use sunscreen with a protection factor appropriate for your skin type and renew it every 2 hours or after bathing. It's also advisable to avoid the sun during peak hours of the day. Wear light clothing and light colors, and cover your head with a hat or cap. Buying low-fat foods. These foods can have a deceptive effect as they usually contain more sugar, processed flour, and sodium than normal foods. These ingredients can increase the risk of obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases. It's better to read labels and ingredients before buying these foods and opt for natural or whole foods that have more fiber, vitamins, and minerals. It's also important to moderate fat consumption and choose fats of vegetable origin such as olive oil, avocado, or nuts. Using plastic water bottles. Some plastic bottles contain bisphenol A or BPA, a substance that has been linked to obesity and decreased fertility. BPA can leach into the water when the bottle is heated, exposed to sunlight, or reused several times. To avoid this risk, it's better to use reusable bottles made of glass or metal, which are more ecological and safer. It's also important to wash bottles frequently and not fill them with hot water or carbonated beverages. That's all for today's video. I hope you liked it and that it helped you learn something new. Remember that your health is the most important thing and that it depends on you to take care of it and improve it. Don't let bad habits prevent you from living a full and happy life. If you like this video, I invite you to give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel, Monk Wisdom, where you'll find more videos about interesting topics, Zen stories, and practical advice. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.